Hey guys, how's it going? I'm the Duke of Italy, favorite lo-fi, crunchy, glitchy, disgusting, death grind, cloud rap, blackened, shoegaze music YouTuber. Being obnoxious because I spent the longest time trying to figure out how to make these videos less grainy, but it's a little grainy to be honest, pretty grainy. But I was looking through my videos and I was gonna edit a video tonight about jazz music, and the video had no audio, so that's just what we're dealing with. But fortunately for all the yous out there, I have something else to talk about. If you keep up with my videos regularly, which you probably don't, but more importantly, I saw a show last night, a show that was supposed to include Body Void and Elizabeth Colorwheel, but actually, it ended up only having 3 bands. Now, this is a show I saw at the Lodge of Sorrows Monday night on the 23rd of May, 2022, if you guys need to reference anything. And these were 3 bands I did not know the actual material of, and yet they were bands I felt like seeing because Lodge of Sorrows always has incredible shows, especially if it's bands from out of state. Something that's really an experience to behold, and it's something I was really happy to see, especially because it turned out so well. And this is a death metal show, so if death metal is not your thing at all, if you refuse to listen to death metal, I recommend that you leave. But if you are open to it, even a little bit, I really recommend you listen, especially if you're into other extreme genres such as harsh noise, any other metal subgenre, or if you're into, like, honestly, hip hop, because we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But this show was honestly incredible. Had a really good time, and I'm really happy to dive into it. But the bands I saw were Jarhead, Fertilizer, Mortiferum, and Primitive Man. I'm going to talk about Primitive Man the most, and the other bands were good. They were great, actually. It's just Primitive Man resonated with me in particular. If you don't know Jarhead Fertilizer, they are frequently affiliated with Full of Hell because 2 of the members, being the drummer and the bassist, are both in Jarhead Fertilizer. Now, this is not a grindcore band. This is a death metal band. And they're a really percussive sounding, very rhythmic death metal band. A lot of really heavy riffs. Pretty standard 4-piece, I believe. There were 2 guitarists, a bassist, and a drummer. A lot of long hair going on up there. A lot of really thrashy stuff going on. A lot of like vocal snippets, really aggressive vocal style, really in your face. Probably like tinges of grindcore, especially with the political aspects, because there were songs that, well, they weren't really political commentary, but they're more like social. They had a song that they said this song is about being a snitch before they started doing it. The drummer was on vocals, as well as, I want to say, the bassist, if I remember correctly, because I even remember the bassist being on vocals a little bit when I saw Full of Hell at the Lodge of Sorrows months earlier. This band was fantastic, basically. Really good, really aggressive death metal, really in your face, really edgy stuff. If you're in it for a little more of a grindcore type feel, honestly, they had it pretty well. They also had one song that had like a police siren going off like the whole song. It really added to the tension. I thought that was a really nice touch. They also used like hip hop beat samples in the middle of tracks. There was one song where they did it, and I saw the whole band just start swaying like back and forth to it, and I was like, this is such a jam. In terms of a band you could Nae Nae to, no greater band than Jarhead Fertilizer. You could absolutely Nae Nae to them, which gives them a 10 out of 10. You could Nae Nae to this band. This gets the Duke of Italy based and red pilled certified hood classic seal of approval. You can, in fact, Nae Nae to Jarhead Fertilizer. I want the public to know this. But that was their set. Really percussive, hip hop influenced death metal. Not quite like metalcore. Didn't feel at all metalcore, honestly. Just straight up in your face, punchy, edgy death metal. Good stuff. Then my friends and I, we took a break. Already having a great time before Mortiferum pulled on. And by this point, I was kind of confused because I thought there were supposed to be 5 bands. Turns out there weren't 5 bands, but at least the headliner, Primitive Man, was there. We'll get to them, believe me, and I'm excited to get to them. In fact, I'm going to grab this thing behind me to discuss in just a moment. I hope the audio was caught there. But Mortiferium was up next, and I'm really happy. My the person who draws a lot of the thumbnails for this channel actually bought me a Mortiferum patch, and this is nice because Mortiferum, they've been getting some traction recently. I know their album from last year was widely regarded as one of the phenomenal death doom / death metal albums of the year, and live, I thought they did a fantastic job. The vocalist, it's really funny watching death metal vocalist like sound checks where he was like, yeah, we're gonna need some reverb, we're gonna need some delay here, and he was like doing his yells up there, his growls, and I was like, super lit, super fun. He was just having fun up there. Pretty big band, really big sound. Everyone up there was phenomenal. The guitarist / vocalist was very, very talented, but their style was rather unique. It felt a bit blackened in a way, and I mean that in the sense of melodies. They had quite a melodic sound, and I know they probably don't want to hear that because like they're competing with like noise giants here. They're competing with rhythmic double kicks, blast beats, just in your face punching you. But they were the melodic band of the evening. Not to say they weren't hardcore, because they felt distinctly dark. Very dark sound, very brooding sound. Of course, they had the death metal, the doom influence, because it was death doom, this is kind of like my first experience with death doom metal. And I asked my friend Miguel, who was at the show, as he's in at most live of Sarah's show. I was like, hey, what pace are they? Are they slow? Because I was thinking caveman riffs as we were coming in here, and he's like, yeah, they're like slow-ish. Not very slow at all. They kept pacing pretty well. They had a bit of a progressive flair to them. Riffs went crazy. Riffs were for days. Really melodic style. Really a band I would have rather experienced on the albums first. I did not do a lot of research before this show, just like the metalcore show I saw recently. I was really just here to watch these bands and have a good time, and that I did. Mortiferum did a great job. Probably like the least distinct of the three bands of the night, but I'm positive that if you're a fan of Mortiferum's work, you would have had a really good time, because their actual material they played, I could absolutely tell was fantastic. Unfortunately, it was a day I was just really tired, and paying attention to that kind of gripping style, which is full of a lot more intricacies and subtleties. When compared to these monolithic, a lot more primitive sounding bands, they just stray from the feeling a little bit. And like that sounds like a really stupid critique, because these are death metal bands. You're not exactly getting sophisticated work here. They're not tech death. They're not progressive death. They're nothing along those lines. They're just death metal bands. But this is a band that has a lot of intricacies in the atmosphere of their music, and I wish I could have been in an environment to respect that a little bit more. Because Jarhead Fertilizer going into them didn't really have as a good transition necessarily in terms of feeling. That was just my take. But either way, Mortiferum did do a great job. The music they played was phenomenal. It's just I was so exhausted. There was a couple points where I was like headbanging, and I like forgot that I was even headbanging. But of course, that's just a sign that they were so engaging. Probably to 99% of the people there. It's just this was on me, because I've honestly not been sleeping very well. But this does lead me into the third and final band of the evening, and judging by what I spent my money on, you're probably gonna know who was my favorite band of the evening. This is the Primitive Man shirt I bought after the show. I hope my parents aren't seeing this, because they hate this art. And this is the back here. It's a face. It's kind of hard to see. But Primitive Man is a band from Colorado. They label themselves as Planet Earth's first death sludge band. Now, if you don't know what that means, I mean, neither did I. Like, I know sludge metal decently well, death metal a little less. Both genres I totally enjoy, but going into this, I was like, I don't even know what could be happening. Primitive Man, the idea I was thinking, I was like, oh, we're probably gonna get like caveman riffs, mid-paced, really aggressive, really in your face, percussive stuff, pretty rhythmic. But it was so much more than that. And bear with me, because I'm about to talk to them they're definitely the longest band I'm going to talk about for the video, but I hope I won't talk about them as much. To label them as a drone metal act, or even a funeral doom metal act, Funeral Doom would be wrong because that would mean they have an utterly depressing and crushing sense of atmosphere in a way that is like sad and just depressing. As I'm repeating myself, my bad. Meanwhile, you've got Primitive Man, slow as all hell, but they do have their faster moments. Like Thou just released the collaboration album with Meesmore. If you want a reference there, basically take that with actually more faster moments, but they get slower than Thou ever could. And their specific tone works in a way that even if the guitar is doing tremolo and everything else is slow, it still feels slow. It's just that little extra bit of like the extra bit of strumming just like sinks into your head. I say this and I don't exaggerate. Primitive Man is the loudest band I have ever seen up until this point, and I thought Thou was loud. They are not Primitive Man. Seeing Mayhem was very loud because of the facility they played in. They were not Primitive Man. Of course, it doesn't have the same experience of loudness as when I saw Red Hot Chili Peppers, where I got this shirt. Like 5 years ago now. This was after they released The Getaway, and they just dropped a new album. It's kind of funny, but I could absolutely tell that this was the loudest band I've ever seen. And in terms of visceral impact, this band and Uniform are the two most like thoroughly engaging and like altering of state bands I've seen live, for sure. And Primitive Man, first of all, they got on stage and I see a 6'5" monolith of a man on the guitar. I'd love to comment on the appearance of these bands, I've noticed, but it's never been more important than now, especially for a 3-piece, 3 people, by the way, for the loudest band I've ever seen, really emphasizing power trio. If you look up power trio, you get the dictionary, you see a picture of Primitive Man. These 3 dudes. The drummer was a guy, just a guy. I'm not gonna comment on his appearance. I'm not like judging their appearance. It's just like for the impact of the show, for once it actually meant something for people that weren't costumed. The bassist and the guitarist both looked like they probably weighed 300 pounds. Bassist was a little stockier, but just like wide as hell shoulders. And the guitarist, probably like 6'5", huge man. And what was nice was I was talking to the merch, the wonderful merch lady after this, and she was like, "Yeah, Ben's a sweetheart. I've known him for 10 years." And I was like, that is hilarious to me, because this man sounds like he would just slowly choke you out. That is what the music sounds like. And the term Primitive Man, I got some really vivid images in my head when I was listening to this music, or one really vivid image of like a gorilla man like climbing a mountain and like beating his chest to like the thunderclouds, and in the thunderclouds opens up a mouth and 2 eyes, and the roaring sound is in response to this monkey man, and they're conversing, and this is like the ritual he has undertaken. It felt so much like, it really felt prehistoric. It really felt like ancient and like in your DNA. This band was noisy, so noisy. And one thing that was cool about this band was that on stage, the pedal boards weren't for their feet. They had this grotesque 2 like tiny little plastic tables in front of them with all their pedals on top, and these disgusting red patch cables like branched between them, and it looked like in this specific light, I'm pretty sure the effect, this might be a stretch, but it almost was like they had a deer carcass and the sinew is just out and the bits of flesh, and they were tweaking these settings. There's a reason they had this up here. They were like fiddling with it in between sounds. They were also retuning their instruments, as bands tend to do. And it was like they were like finicking with it to create these huge walls of noise. And they were noisy to begin with. Literally, as I walked in, I was farther away from the stage. I was like kind of near the entrance, and I hear this immense feedback. They started the set with just feedback, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the loudest set I knew this was about to be the loudest set I've ever seen, and I could just tell. And then I get in the crowd, and then they started playing the music, and then they started off with like some black metal type stuff. They did a couple songs that were very much dipping their toes into black metal, heavy mid-range tremolo riffs, absolutely like assaulting sound, kind of like Migua's, like Migua style, like rhythm playing, but the tone was brutal, utterly like hail upon your skin. And the bass sounded monolithic, and as much as like it was terrifying when the music was playing, it was even worse when they weren't playing. The feedback was nuts. And for someone who's not listened to much Primitive Man, my cursory research on their Rate Your Music page, I know they have a dark ambient album, but I don't think they referenced it for the set, but they did play a noise track, or a noise piece rather. They finished a song and they started fiddling with it. And this was the most assaulting song I've probably ever been under in my life, except for maybe the Uniform Drone song. And this is when they were fiddling with it, and it gets so loud in there. I could swear it's coming from behind me, and it feels like there's actually like a person grabbing my head and just crushing it between their giant gorilla hands. It really felt like they were just pressing bones into my head. Normally I feel it in my ears. Now I felt the floor. Now I felt part of it in my chest. It felt like my neck was being constrained. My neck still hurts, but it's because I was headbanging, and I may or may not have had alcohol in my system for the opening set. So headbanging was a little too hard. But I won't get into that because I think that's unnecessary for the impact of these bands here. But this noise piece here, just utterly terrifying. And the thing, Primitive Man, I felt my very own genetics screaming at me. My DNA, down to the little base amino acids and the proteins, they were just like, get out of there. Run away from this. Don't stick around to see what this could possibly lead to. I genuinely felt a little bit scared, and I don't think I've ever been scared in like a musical situation. But that was insane. One of the best tracks I've ever seen performed live was this noise piece, especially in the context of all these other songs. Like, noise is noise. Like, Pulse Demon by Merzbow is not my favorite Merzbow album, even from only the like 3-4 maybe Merzbow albums I've heard, simply because like noise for noise's sake is really not for me, as aggressive as it may sound. I like some of the more groovy stuff on Tri-Wave Pagoda, but it's the fact that swamped with all of these like more defined songs, and I say that loosely because they're pretty tough to hear. You've got this massive noise piece, and it's not even messing around a little bit. I should probably mention the guitarist vocalist one more time. His vocals were ridiculous. He had this bellowing roar, kind of Death Doom style, just screeching roar, paired with like a slightly higher pitched wretched yell. And I mean yell. You could tell there was a ton of power behind it, and it was just going over the audience. And I watched as he was like tilted to the corner with his face, and it's like he was calling out to some like long forgotten deity for like rain or something that would have been called on for back then. But it was so cool, and the whole thing went on. And I will say, the other bands, gosh, getting even remembering this is interesting to say the least. The other bands, they had like a moment or two between songs for you to catch your breath or clap even. A lot of times we were clapping for these bands, which is rather interesting because like I actually don't recall clapping for many bands in between until the end. Or a lot of them would be like, this next song's about this. They only mentioned that like a couple times, but Mortiferum didn't say it at all. Jarhead Fertilizer said it a couple times, but they would have a second between. Primitive Man was just the only thing in between the songs was feedback. The only thing was more guitar sounds. It was unrelenting. You couldn't get a word into anybody. People were typing on their phones for notes just to show them stuff, just to be like, hey, like, because like, I mean, you gotta mention stuff at concerts. Like, you can mention, you can be a boomer as much as you want and be like, oh, these kids these days have their phones out in their concerts recording stuff. Actually, for the first time in a long time, recorded some footage, and I might play it to end this video. Strictly to show that I doubted my phone could even process what was the sounds were going on here, and I was right. A lot of what was there, I was like, when I feel my bass guitar playing, when I'm playing it myself on like a rather loud volume for just one person, in an event that I'm not playing for other people, feeling that, the whole room felt like what my bass guitar would feel like when I'm playing it. Yeah, the feedback padded out the songs. There were some faster paced songs that would drone into these monolithically super long songs that the drummer, he would like slow down entirely to just double crash, or the ride and the crash at the same time, and then he'd pause for 2 measures and he'd do it again, and then he'd add in like a tom fill, and he was so dynamic. And I gotta commend drummers like him and the drummer from Thou for being so incredibly dynamic when they can just like hi-hat, crash, hi-hat, crash. He's like doing that, and then he'll throw in like a big tom fill, and it's not out of place either. It doesn't feel like it's breaking the stuff. But between the like Ascension style stuff, between like the oppressive, like almost like murderous tone of some of the other songs, and some of the highly ritualistic songs, and the vocals that sounded like they were like just growling from the end of a cave, truly sounded bestial in nature. Such a unique set. And when they played one of their more normal songs, I guess, and I really say it with a grain of salt, a lot less dynamics, probably for the ending there, one of their more mid-paced, probably like an average pace song for them, still slow as all hell, still like, who's it, like Sisyphus, who like pushed the stone up the hill. I'm totally blanking on my mythological figures here, but like glacially slow stuff, and it ended with more of a normal pace track, and then the feedback like slowed to a screeching halt, and it was just like a second or two for it just to like drone off, and the vocalist comes up and he goes, thank you, done, just done. And everyone there, like before they clapped, they just like looked for a second. They're like, what was that? Everyone started clapping, of course. And talking to my friends after, I was like, is this the loudest band you've ever seen? I've got a friend I've been jamming with who has seen Sun live. He said, no, Sun was louder. I expected that. And I asked another guy I've been jamming with, and he was like, yeah, that is the loudest band I've ever seen. And then my friend Spencer, who I saw the metalcore show with, was at this show as well. And I asked him, like, is that the loudest show you've ever seen, rather? And he's like, one band has beat them, and it was Boris, another drone metal giant. You gotta remember, Lodge of Sorrows is a loud venue, but it is not necessarily constructed for like these drone metal experiences, I guess. But I even at one point, I think about like 30 seconds into Primitive Man, like tried to Nae Nae in front of my friends just to be silly. And then I was like, what's even the point? What's even the point when I'm just delaying the inevitable? Really nice, pleasant evening. Really good feelings there. Really good vibes all around. Everyone was enjoying it. Crowd was pretty solid. It's a Lodge of Sorrows show. Crowd's gonna be pretty good. Of course, you got the couple death metal dudes who just love to do the slam style, like moshing. I just love shoving people. Shoving people is my personal favorite thing there. I mean, you mosh how you want to mosh, but that's how I like to do it. But this was an amazing show. Absolutely see Primitive Man. Mortiferum, research the band and then see them. They are great. And absolutely vibe to Jarhead Fertilizer. I need to put some respect on their name real quick. I need to put some respect on Mortiferum's name as well, because they were a great band. It's just Primitive Man is a life-changing experience, especially for someone who like, Death Sludge isn't a thing. And especially for something that feels so much more blackened and atmospheric. It's rather interesting. Another amazing show from Lodge of Sorrows. The touring shows that pull up to Lodge of Sorrows are the best shows in the world. In the world. I think these two shows and watching like probably like the 100 Gex set is up there with Drain Gang. Drain Gang might be like the best show I've ever seen, but like I just want to mention that this show is up there for a $20 at the door, $16 online ticket. You guys are really sleeping on Legend of Sorrows. I really want to just give them a shout out. They pulled off another amazing show, and you guys got to see them. 10 out of 10 show. Utterly. Just phenomenal. Front to back. Couldn't get any better. That's about it. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Any comments, questions, or concerns, go ahead and comment down below. Like and subscribe. I would appreciate that a whole lot. It helps me a lot. I hope you guys watch my next video, or go watch my old videos. They're decent if you like watching a guy who doesn't get enough sleep talk about Blade a whole lot, and sometimes black metal. But that's about it. Hope you guys are doing well. Have a good day. Bye.